it was a lot of money. We were bringing in $7-8 million a week at times, sometimes $10 million, you know.
My name's Joe, host of the Lightweights podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Michael Franzese. If you don't know, Michael Franzese is an American former mobster who is a capo regime of the Columbro crime family. Michael helped implement a scheme to defraud the federal government out of gasoline taxes in the early 1980s.
At one point in time, I had over 350 gas stations that I either owned, operated, or was delivering product to.
Authorities say the Mafia first moved into the gasoline business in New York and is now active in at least 12 other states.
There was times we were pulling in $10 million a week. Once I was into it, and I knew the government knew we were doing something, they couldn't figure it out. I said, you know what? You get as much time for $1 billion as you do for $1 million, so I may as well keep going. And that was my attitude. In 1986, Fortune magazine wrote a huge article, 50 biggest and most powerful mob bosses in the country, 49 of them are dead. I'm the only one that survived.
Michael Franzese is now a high-ranking member of an organized crime family, the Columbro Mafia family.
In 1986, he was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison on conspiracy charges. He was ultimately released in 1994. Currently, he's a motivational speaker, a storyteller. He has an incredible YouTube channel, and I highly recommend going to check it out.
I want to tell you this. Murder is ugly. If they prove you put $1 into buying your house, one illegal dollar, they take your whole house. The Hells Angels, they're a very real group. It was very interesting to me to find out that they're not considered a criminal organization. Next 18 months to 2 years, I was in kind of like a pledge period. I was known as a recruit.
And now currently shares some incredible wisdom. He has a wine business, a pizza business.
Well, this is a great interview, and thank you for giving me questions that I haven't really had in the past.
So please enjoy this podcast with Michael Franzese. What I think, you never let your ego get the best of you. And I feel like that's a huge reason why you were able to come out on top and be where you are now. Do you think you always had that?
You know, one quality or trait that I've always really admired in people of prominence and relevance is humility. I just think it's so attractive. I like people that have confidence, but there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. I don't think people enjoy arrogance. I certainly don't like it, but I like to see when somebody's confident, but they're also humble. And so it's something that I saw in my dad, growing up, that he was a charismatic guy, but he always treated people the right way, and he had a certain humility about him, but he also had strength and confidence. And I guess, it just had a big impact on me, and I try to live my life that way.
Even from high school and when you were about to go to college, you felt that way too?
Yeah, I really did. I mean, this was from an early age, for me. And, I played ball in school, and I was kind of one of the leaders in the class, that. But, maybe I acted a little differently in school, I don't know. But I always had good marks, but not great conduct for some reason. I don't know why.
What would 20-year-old Michael think of him today?
I hope he'd like him. I mean, listen, I think you're judged a lot of time by the people that you have around you. And, I have a great family, I have a great wife and kids, and I got a lot of good friends, decent people. So I think in that regard, Michael would be okay with Michael today.
Going from conversations with Mike Tyson to the recent Son of Sam, what kind of feelings do you have going into conversations like those?
Well, they're different. Mike is a very intelligent guy. He really has a lot of wisdom. He's been through a lot, so I understand some of his struggles and challenges. I understand how he feels about certain things. So I can relate to that, obviously. We've come up in different ways, but also in the same way. So, I enjoy sitting with him. I really do. Son of Sam, for me, it was an experience because I remember that time very well. As a matter of fact, there was a night when I thought we were going to catch, David Berkowitz, because we heard he was in the neighborhood back in Queens. But for me, talking to him was really about his mental health. What drives somebody to be that kind of a person? So interested in talking to him. I believe he was very sincere and, and truthful and honest.
Did you have friends at the time who were afraid of David?
No, we weren't afraid of him. We wanted to catch him. We didn't like what he was doing, obviously. They weren't afraid of him. But, there were people around at that time that didn't want to sit in their cars at night and didn't want to go out at night. He really wreaked havoc in the neighborhood. And there was terror involved, around what he was doing. Nowadays,
you're doing a lot of content, obviously very different from where you first started. Are you enjoying doing it?
Yes and no, Joe. It's become such a major part of my life. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. We only set this studio up in the last 3 months, 4 months. Well, actually, start of the year, January. I had a studio about 2 miles from here. But my team and my wife, who does all my filming, had such a difficult time getting me to the studio to sit down and do this. When our lease was up, we left the studio. We built the studio in the house. So now I have no excuse. I come downstairs, here I am. I enjoy, I would rather interact with people. I'm a people person. So I like doing my speaking engagements. I like that personal touch. But this has been very good for the brand. I believe, honestly, that I have a platform and, people want to hear my views. They do love the mob stories, obviously. And for some reason, it's caught on. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it and just keep going. And that's what we're doing.
Your first time doing it 3 years ago, were you hesitant?
Yeah, I didn't want to do it. This happened during the pandemic. I had 43 speaking dates postponed because of the pandemic. So my team called me up. Mike, what are you going to do? I said, nothing. I'm going to stay home. It's the first time in 25 years I'm not traveling 40 weeks out of the year. No, you can't do that. You got to go on social media. I said, I don't want to do that. You got to go. You got to start a YouTube channel. It took me about 3 months before I gave in, and then it just blew up.
Did you discuss with your kids?
No, I didn't. I didn't ask their permission.
Well, not permission, just to get their insight. Do you want to do social media?
My daughter maybe, but they're not all into social media. It's they're adult kids now, and they're into it, but they're not really into it. I think I'm into it more than they are.
You have 5 daughters?
I have 5 daughters, yes, and 2 boys.
What was it like when they would bring home dates?
It was challenging for them, really challenging for them. And for me, everybody, they minded their P's and Q's. They were always great in my presence, And there's a few I had to sit down with, and I told them straight out. I said, let me tell you something. When I knew my daughters were getting serious, I would sit them down, and I told them just like this. I said, let me explain something to you. You got a very good girl here. They were brought up the right way. They have respect. They're good girls. They have a great mom, that they grew up under. I said, but they're very, very difficult. I said, they're demanding, they're independent. I said, if you can't deal with that, get out now, because there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. I told them straight out. And they go, okay. It's kind of a tough conversation to have, but they pay attention.
Did Michael Franzese go to parent-teacher conferences as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was very active. When I was home from prison, I was very active in my kids' schooling. I coached my son's baseball team. I coached his, basketball team, so I was very into it.
Was that important for you growing up with what your father was doing, that you wanted to be there for your kids?
Yeah, I really did. And, even when I was in prison, the most important thing for me was to try to stay in touch, get on the phone, get visits, so that I was still part of the family. Because when my dad went away, at that time, they had 1 visit a month and 1 3-minute phone call a month. So he, the family just drifted away from him. Just, no contact, can't help it. So I was very concerned about that. And fortunately, the system lightened up then. You were able to get, 4 or 5 visits a week, and, you can get on the phone every day. So it was very important for me to stay in touch with my family.
Was your father imprisoned in Kansas?
He was, yeah, Leavenworth.
And you guys drove from New York to Kansas to visit?
No, we flew.
We flew.
Yeah. And we normally would go the last day of the month and the first day of the next month. So we'd have 2 days, in a row.
And what kind of visits were they? Was there the glass separation?
No glass separation. You sat in a room across from a table. You can hug when you come in. You can hug when you leave. But other than that, there was no touching.
Now you're doing Franzese Wines.
Yes.
How does that stack up compared to all the other businesses you've ever done? Do you enjoy this one?
I really do. Number one, I enjoy wine. I'm not a drinker, but my grandfather started making wine when I was 10 years old in the basement in Brooklyn. So he fed it, to all of us. So me, my cousins, my brothers and sisters, we all drank wine. So I enjoy wine. And for me, wine was always a symbol of family, bringing people together. You don't go to a bar and order a glass of wine. You normally have it at dinner, you have it with family. So that was the tradition that I was used to. So when I was approached to get involved with this wine, obviously did my due diligence and did everything, but I said, something I want to be involved in. And I'm very happy because we've been extremely successful over the past 2 years. We're a young company, but we're being accepted everywhere. Our wine's going to be all over the country, and we're now in the United Kingdom and Australia also. So it's moving pretty quickly.
Were there any hurdles that you had to overcome with it?
Well, like any new company, number one, the wine is from Armenia, It's not real popular here in the United States, but one of the reasons they came to me is because they wanted to introduce Armenian wine into the United States. And the story behind the wine kind of fit my story. Long story short, when Noah's Ark landed at the foot of Mount Ararat, which was Armenia, the first vineyards in the new civilization were grown at the foot of Mount Ararat, Armenia. So it's kind of a transforming, new civilization. My story is about transformation, so they came to me to brand it, and I love the people involved, and it's worked out.
What's your favorite flavor of it?
We have 3 that we're really highlighting right now. We have all different varieties, but we have a Rennie, it's called, and it's like a Pinot Noir, which I love. And we have a Malbec that's terrific. And normally Malbec is from Argentina, but I guarantee when you taste ours from Armenia, you're going to say, wow. And then we have a pomegranate wine that, nobody's ever seen before because it's really exclusive to Armenia. That's flying off the shelves. It's a very unique bottle. The packaging is great, and people are loving it. So we're very happy where we are.
Are there any differences between Armenian wine and Italian wine?
Well, taste, yeah, and it's grown differently. There's a higher elevation. There's less sugar in it because the sugar is all natural, so there's no additives in it at that point. It's a little healthier. I love Italian wine too. I'm going to be honest with you. People always ask me, Michael, why wasn't an Italian wine? Eventually, we may have one. But right now, we're enjoying what we have here.
Are you still involved in Slices Pizza?
I am, yeah, very much. We may have a very exciting and huge announcement with Slices in the next couple of weeks, I would say. I'm not going to reveal it now. I can't. But we're very excited as to where we are now. And, now we have, aside from that announcement, we have these micro vending machines. Our pizza is coming out of vending machines, and it's delicious. And we're putting them all over the place.
At what point were you involved in Slices? Right from the beginning?
From the beginning. My partner and I go back 30 years. I supported him in a number of restaurants. He's a terrific chef. And after we sold our last restaurant, he said, I said to him, what do you want to do? He said, well, I want to go into the pizza business.
He wanted to do pizza.
Yes. And I said, Tony, everyone and their brother is in pizza. What are we going to do differently? And he said, let me show you. He went to Italy and spent 6 months there and came back with a pizza that was just amazing, really amazing. And it's the only pizza, I'm telling you this, that can come out of a vending machine and taste like it just came out of the oven.
Is there one in Newport?
Perfect. There's one in the church, in Harvest Church. Actually, that's Irvine, but it's right near the airport, near John Wayne Airport.
Okay, because I came down to Newport trying to find it, and I couldn't find it.
That's where it is.
Okay. How does social media rank on fulfillment scale of everything you're doing?
Well, it's expanding the brand. So, it's the best way to market and advertise right now. If you have a social media presence, it really goes a long way to help you in marketing. And because I have a big presence, we have over 1 million followers on YouTube and I think 500 million views at this point. It's been very helpful as far as expanding the brand, making people aware of the wine, aware of the Slices, and everything else that I'm doing. I mean, I'm going on tour in the United Kingdom in May, and, a lot of tickets are sold because of my visibility on social media. So, listen, I like the benefits of social media. There's also a dark side, and people have asked me about this. And unfortunately, I think the dark side really impacts our youth. And if somebody were to say to me tomorrow, this is not going to be popular, Michael, we know you've succeeded on social media, but we have to shut it all down, I would say, do it. Go for it. Because I think there's a lot of harm that comes out of it. And it's just, I like it the way it was way back when we didn't have this.
I feel like your overall impact has been very positive in the grand scheme of the internet, because I found you through motivational speeches that people cut up of your words.
Right.
And I would just listen to it on repeat. And just the way that you viewed everything was very similar to how I viewed things in order to get ahead, to have people like you, to want to work with you. And I thought that was so rare compared to all the other, like the David Goggins and the Jocko motivational speeches. But I really admired just the way that you spoke about how you got through the life.
Well, I appreciate that. And I try to be a positive influence on people. We don't like negativity. I mean, unfortunately, we're surrounded by it in the world. But, when you can be a positive voice out there, I think you should be. And, so I try.
Did you expect the reaction to be as large as it is?
I didn't know what to expect, honestly. And even as YouTube was blowing up, I didn't realize, how good it was. I just, hey, we're telling stories, people are enjoying it, great. But, understand, I've been a speaker now for 25 years. And I always like to say that I've had a very positive impact on my audience. We've never had a bad date. I mean, it always goes well. So I wasn't shocked that people were enjoying it because it's what I'm used to. But, when people started to tell me, Michael, nobody reaches 1 million followers. It's like 0.23 or something like that. I said, well, wow, we're very fortunate. I mean, this is, and we owe it to the people that are enjoying it.
What was your first speaking event?
My very first speaking event was at a church, actually. But the way it came about, I was finishing up my prison time when I got approached by the heads of security for all of the pro sports leagues. They actually came into prison because I had a big gambling operation on the street, and they knew gambling was dangerous for professional sports, and they asked me to participate in a video. And this was while I was in prison. I had 6 months left to go. So I did the video. I told them exactly how we set up athletes, how we put them in trouble, how they had gambling issues, and how organized crime was involved in it. And then they do a video, a 20-minute video. They feature me prominently all the way through. And then I get out of prison. They approach me directly and they say, you got to come and talk to our athletes. We need your help. And I started that when I got out of prison in 95, 96. That, and I started speaking at a church. My pastor asked me to come and give my testimony. I didn't even know what testimony was. I thought you did it from a witness stand. But so I spoke at a church and I started speaking to professional athletes, and that's how it took off.
So you really stumbled into it.
Oh, absolutely. Backed into it. I had no idea. Never a thought in my mind. Never thought of being a speaker. It was the last thing I thought I'd be doing.
Did it cross your mind at all to say no to that?
Initially, I did say no. I said, come on, I don't do videos. I said, I'm trying to get out of prison and get my life back in order. But they said, come on, you claim you want to turn your life around. We'll give you an opportunity to prove it. Help these athletes out, get them out of trouble. So I said, okay, it sounds good. I did it.
When you were finishing up your sentence, how much did you speak with your wife about what your plan was as soon as you got out?
Well, I told her what was going on. I didn't see it as a career. I said, okay, these guys were asking me to come and talk. Let me come and talk, And then I'm thinking about how I'm going to get involved in business because I'm a business guy. And then I'm getting called again. Then I'm getting called again. Then all of a sudden, I said, wow, people are paying me to do this, So I backed into it. I honestly backed into it. I can't claim credit for it. I think it was just a plan that was, God had for me, and it worked out.
Are there any success stories of people that you've spoken to that turned their lives around?
Many. One of the most satisfying things about doing what I do is the hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands now, over 25 years of emails and messages I get telling me that I've had a very positive impact on their life, that I changed their life around, that, they heard me speak once. I have a fella coming here Saturday morning. I'm meeting with him. He heard me once. And he was in a drug situation, all that, and turned his whole life around after hearing me once online. So when you hear that, you say, wow, there's people benefiting from this that you don't even know. It's very rewarding, and it keeps me going.
That's really incredible.
Yeah.
How does having your own social media, like your own setup even here, compare to doing the traditional stuff? Do you feel like you have a closer connection with the audience?
I do, because people keep turning in, the same people, and then we get new ones, obviously. But I enjoy, once I'm doing it, I enjoy it. It's getting me in to do it, to sit down and start up. And then obviously you have to develop content. I mean, where's it coming from? I try to transition from mob stories. If there's something interesting in mob, like I think I released a video today, I spoke with, somebody that was involved in that life and had an interesting story, But I'm trying to get out of it because I'm not going to make things up. And I'm doing this now for 3 years. So just about everything I knew about the life and everything that I was personally involved in, I've spoken about. So unless something comes across new and I can talk about it from my perspective, I'm not going to make things up. So, I start to talk about different things. And people are gradually accepting that and liking it. On YouTube, they get mad if I get into politics, and I'm very, very much in tune with what's going on in the world and my country. So I try to stay away from politics, and I try to explain to them, there's certain issues that might be politically motivated, but they're issues that are impacting our lives. So if I'm talking about that as an issue, don't think politics. just that, if drugs are coming over the southern border and coming into your neighborhood and killing your kids, I'm talking about an issue. That's not politics. How they're dealt with, those issues, is politically motivated. We understand that. But these are issues that are important. So I try to, because that's what's important to me. And I hope that, I could be a voice where people can relate to and understand. And if we need to effectuate change when things aren't going the right way, hopefully I can be a motivator for that.
Are you aware of the response for those comments when you talk about very sensitive topics? Like, do you know how to word them to the audience so that people don't just immediately react and take in what you're saying?
Yeah, you try, but listen, I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this in a negative way, and it's certainly not personal to anyone, but, social media has exposed the lunacy in the world. I mean, there's some comments that come across that don't even relate to the video that I talked about. And I'm saying, where do these people come from, But, look, somebody told me one time, it takes all kind of vegetables to make vegetable soup. And that's how I look at the internet and the comments that I get. But, for the most part, they're very positive. People understand it. They relate to it. I try not to, I try not to get negative online. I don't demean people and I don't talk bad about people. I try to do my thing in a way that people can understand and accept it.
Right. Can we talk a little bit about your childhood?
Sure.
When you were a kid, the police made it known that you were being investigated, your father was being investigated. Why did they want it to be known? Were they just trying to establish their presence?
It was just a different way of investigating back then. Law enforcement, their tactics and techniques were different against organized crime than they are today. Today, everything's very covert. Undercover informants, high-tech surveillance equipment. You can be under investigation and not know it today. Back then, they wanted you to know about it. That was just their technique. They didn't have all the surveillance techniques that they have today, so they would follow you. They would watch you. They would sit outside of your house. They got, surveillance on you 24/7. Car parked around my house, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it was very obvious. Couldn't get away from it. We would go to a restaurant. We'd have, cars following us and agents getting out and sitting behind us, watching us eat. So, I grew up with this.
Had they not made such a presence, do you think you would have went to school?
Well, I was going to school.
For college, to graduate.
Well, no, it didn't matter because the reason I left college was because my father got a 50-year prison sentence, went off to do his time. Joe Columbro, who was the boss of that family, he kind of took me under his wing. And I thought that I needed to help my dad get out of a sentence that I think he was framed on. I know he was framed on, 100%. My dad was framed. So I needed to help him out.
When you were next to Joe Columbro on his final days, how did you internalize that of something such high magnitude, so awful happening?
Well, it was the second murder that I was, that was the first one I was a witness to in that regard. And it was shocking. I was 12 steps away from him when the shots rang out. And then there was mayhem at the rally that we had. So it was shocking. I love Joey. He treated me well, and I had a lot of respect for him. So it was shocking. It really was. And then one time there was another friend of my dad's that was, pretty brutally murdered. And when I went to his funeral, he was unrecognizable, and that really had an impact on me because I loved that guy too. It was a Jewish friend of ours that I loved. So these things, you internalize them, like what's going on, what's happening, And I was new to the life at that point, so I didn't understand why these things were happening. And my father only started to let me know because, hey, these are friends, these are good people. Why are they getting killed? So it took some really thought, a lot of thought to finally process what was really going on.
Do you think you took it in differently than a lot of your peers, where if they maybe wanted revenge, you saw it as we have to be careful?
Well, people have asked me, Michael, when you saw that, why didn't you just get out of life and run the other way? You've seen brutal murders, people getting killed. You were a college kid at that point. What made you do that? I don't know, To me, I was driven to try to help my dad in any which way that I can. Those things bothered me, but I kind of accepted it at some point. This may be offensive to people, as part of the life. And I said, okay, if this is part of it, this is what I'm dealing with. But it was tough. It was tough.
What do you think are some of the most important things you lived while living that life that apply to today?
A couple of things. I learned to be the last person to pass judgment on someone because I realized in that life, the people that were fast or quick, I say, to judge somebody in a negative way, when it came their turn, and it always does, they would judge the same way. So I always learn, you know what, I want to be the last one to condemn somebody or judge somebody, because when my turn comes, I want them to give me a shot. And it worked out that way. You know, I also learned how to respect people. You know, I realized, you know, it's the little people in life. When I say little people, I don't mean that in a demeaning way, okay, that make you strong, you know. I realized when I went into the Copacabana and I wanted to get a ringside table, they didn't do it because I was Michael Franzese. They do it because I was kind, courteous. I tipped the maitre d'. I made him feel good. I get a ringside table. I treated him right. You know, my valet, when a valet parker, you know, can you keep my car up front? Give him a $20 bill, shake his hand. Hey, you're a nice guy. You know, they treat you differently. So I realized treat people the right way and it comes back to you in spades. And because, you know, a lot of time, especially in that life, it's the people on top that you got to worry about, not the people underneath you. It's people on top you got to worry about. So you treat people right, and it'll come back to you in a good way.
Did your mother help teach you that?
My father helped teach me that. Yeah, he had that way about him. I watched him, and I saw the way he treated people. You know, he got a lot of respect in return.
When he was locked up, would you say you guys were still pretty close?
Oh, yeah.
As close as you could be?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, my dad and I were extremely close. Obviously, when I walked away from all that life, we had our differences, but we were still close. It was different, but we were close. I love my dad, no question.
Being recruited at 22 is pretty young. Did you straighten out right away in order to succeed in the life, or were you still being a little knucklehead kind of guy?
You know, I think I learned pretty quickly. Yeah. I mean, you make mistakes. You know, I made a couple of mistakes, but I wouldn't put myself in the knucklehead category. Just, hey, I went through a learning process, but I was a fast learner. I observed and I learned quick, and I had a great mentor in my dad. So, and you know, the one thing that I try to tell people, you know, I'm one of 7. I have 6 brothers and sisters. I can honestly say that I'm the only one that really listened to my dad. I really mean. So, you know, I learned to become a good listener. When people, even today, you know, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. When somebody is teaching me something, I listen. You know, I have a 25-year-old partner. You know, he'll run circles around me online and on the internet. He talks about some things I want to listen because I don't know that, you know. There's no shame in that. There's no harm in that. People know, you know, things better. So I've always been a good listener. And that was extremely helpful to me, really, really, even till today.
Who do you spend your time listening to, whether it's other podcasts or speeches?
You know, just people that make sense, people that I believe to be honest, you know, that they're making sense when they talk. And there are a lot of those people. I mean, Patrick Bet-David is a good friend of mine, and I like, you know, Patrick's ideology, his views on things. You know, Jordan Peterson, you know, another guy that I respect, I hold in pretty high esteem. Dan Bongino, you know, I like the fact that they're bold in what they say and they can back it up, you know, and they make sense. You got to make sense, you know. If you have an ideology, your ideology has to make sense. It can't be yours just because you want things to be that way or you envision it. They have to make sense. And so I look up to people that make sense.
In terms of Patrick, who approached who for the conversation with Sammy the Bull?
Patrick came to us, yeah.
And then immediately you agreed?
It wasn't immediate. No, it wasn't immediate. You know, it wasn't immediate on Sammy's part either. You know, we thought about it a little bit because we weren't exactly friends at that point, you know. I had said, you know, something negative about Sammy. He had said some negative things about me, and we didn't know each other. So, you know, we're saying things about each other, and we didn't know them to be true or not. But so it took a while for us to agree, but we agreed, and you saw the what was it called? Mafia States of America, yeah.
You have a interview coming up too with Andrew Tate.
I plan to meet Andrew in May, yes. I'm going over for my tour in the UK, and before we start the tour, I'm going to sit down with Andrew and Tristan.
How do you approach a conversation like that?
You know, I was introduced, well, how would I approach that?
Yeah, are you consuming a lot of his content to figure out what you want to discuss with him, or?
Yeah, you know, we have a lot of the same views. Now, let me make this clear. I have 5 daughters and a wife. They're all very independent, And I put my wife on a pedestal. My daughters, I treat them the same way. So, there's no misogyny in my makeup. And I think a lot of things that Andrew says, because I've spoken to him differently, are taken out of context. I also know that, the charge, I was very supportive because I don't like what they did to him. I don't like when government oversteps themselves and overreaches because they don't like somebody else's ideology. We see it happening here in America. And I've said this a million times, and I'll say it for anybody and everybody. People are innocent until proven guilty. Just because they're charged with something doesn't mean that it's correct. We see that all the time. And I'm very supportive of Andrew in that regard. I think a lot of things that he's being accused of are not true. That's it. And we're going to talk about that. And we're going to just talk about, we'll talk about our views on women and our views on government and religion and everything else. He's a very interesting guy. And I think we'll have some good back and forth.
Who else would you want to chat with?
I'm going to speak with his brother, Tristan. It's interesting there because Tristan is a Christian and Andrew is Muslim. So I kind of look forward to sitting down with the two of them and seeing how that's going to go. But, I'd like to sit with Jordan Peterson again. He interviewed me. I would love to interview him. I went to one of his events, and I'm telling you, he is so deep. He really is so deep. So I'd love to sit down and get into. He made me think of things that I had never thought about when he interviewed me. So I love to sit with him. I'm sitting with Vivek Ramaswamy. I have a lot of respect for him. I love what he did, to become, a presidential candidate at one point. So I think we have a lot in common. I'm looking forward to that. A lot of people I'd like to sit with.
What can people expect from your speeches?
A couple of things. I mean, they're going to hear some historical content about the mob. When I go to the UK, they're going to hear how Cosa Nostra, came to America from the time of Al Capone right up to the current time. They'll hear a brief history of that because people want to know that. And there's a lot of misconceptions about that. So that's number one. They'll hear my personal story. And what I like to do, I do a lot of, it's entertaining and it's also informative, We also do a Q&A. People can ask me anything that they want. We do a VIP deal also. But, I like people to come out of there feeling like, wow, if this guy was involved in this, was able to turn his life around, get through struggles and all of this stuff, and get to the point where he is now, if he can do it, why can't I? And that's really the basis of everything, anytime that I talk, to make people understand there is a way out of a bad situation. At one point in time, I might have been the worst person in the room of all of you sitting here. But, the bell went off. And I was able, through determination and help from good people around me, turn my life around. And look where I am now. And that always comes through all of my talks. And, it's amazing. In the Q&A, you would think that 95% of the questions are about mafia stuff, right? Not true. 95% of the questions are personal. How did your wife get through you being in prison for 8 years? How did your wife get through, you had a contract on your life. What did your kids think? How did you get back with your kids? Were you alienated from them? All those kind of questions. That's what they get out of my talks. And I say, wow, that's a good thing.
Speaking of your wife, how did she feel when you guys turned down witness protection?
Well, my wife was 21 years old when I married her. She was a girl from California. She didn't really have any experience with Mafia, Cosa Nostra, any of that. So she trusted me when I told her, don't worry about it. I understand the life and I know what I'm doing. I'm not going to hurt anybody. We're going to have some struggles, but I'll get through it. And I really believed that because I knew a lot of people don't know what I know, obviously, and really the backstory to all of this. But I knew there were going to be some challenging times, but I also knew at the end of the day, I wasn't hurting people. And that would carry the day for me, and that's what happened.
Was California the only place you thought would be far enough, good enough?
No, I came to California because my wife lived here, and she was born and raised here. And also I had a business out here. I had started prior to my meeting her. I had a production company out here, and I loved California weather. It's beautiful.
Did you do the production company because of your father being involved in movies like Texas Chainsaw?
It had nothing to do with it. I kind of backed into that business also. That's a long story, but I backed into the business, and I started to like it. So I brought a production company and I bought a distribution company, and we started making movies.
Were you involved in your father's movies at all?
No, No, my dad did a different kind of movie. I wasn't involved with that.
When Fortune magazine wrote the article on the 50 wealthiest mob members, had you known that you were one of the only 2 remaining now, would you have done things differently in your youth? Would you have tried to get out, realizing how hard it would be?
No, I wouldn't have. When I was in that life, I had a very idealistic view of the life. I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. I wanted to make money. I wanted to please my dad, make him proud of me. And I bought into the ideology 100%. Now, when I say that, there were things that I did that made me uncomfortable. But, the way you look at it, Joe, is you say, hey, we all took an oath. We all understand we can't violate the rules and violate the policies of that life. And if we do, we could pay for it. There's serious consequences. And so we all know that. Our eyes are open. Play by the rules. Don't make a mistake. Don't get yourself in trouble. And that's how I lived that life. Okay, I'm going to play by the rules. So I wanted to be the best possible mob guy I could be. That was it. It was only when the racketeering laws started to come in, a lot of guys started turning informant. I saw that the life was really in trouble. I meet this young girl. I fall in love with her. I know how destructive the life is to families, very destructive. My thought is, okay, I'm a major target. I've been arrested 18 times. I've been indicted 7 times. I had 2 federal racketeering cases. I went to trial 5 times. They're never going to leave me alone. Never going to leave me alone. They had a 14-agency task force assigned to bring me down and put me in jail for life. That was their mission, right? I said, there's no way. I can beat one case and eventually they're going to get me. And under the RICO statute, they're going to put me away for 100 years. That's the kind of time they're giving guy. I said, so the life is in trouble. Let me try to make my exit. That was it.
When you were at the height of doing the gas, did anyone ever approach you to try and do drugs?
A couple of times, but drugs were outlawed during my era. I get a lot of heat. Oh, Michael, you guys were doing drugs. Some guys were doing drugs, but we weren't major drug dealers. We weren't cartels. We weren't allowed to do it, and I hated drugs. My sister died of an overdose. My brother was a drug addict for 25 years, put us through hell. I hated anything to do with drugs, so I would never get involved in it, never, no matter what.
When you found that avenue for gasoline, did a light bulb click in you like, this is it?
Absolutely. I saw it, yeah. It took me about a week and a half to realize what I had. And I said, this is big. I can take this to a whole nother level.
And you played out every scenario of how you can make it happen?
Everything, yeah. I had a partner that was brilliant in this regard. And between the 2 of us, we devised this scheme. He was the major architect of this, no question. But I showed him how we can get longevity out of it. I also showed him how we can protect ourselves. And I had to protect him on the street because, other guys in the life would have ate him up. I mean, he would have never lasted. So, we had a good thing going, no doubt.
You spoke about it with Persico, that it needs to stay within the family.
Yeah.
Was it within the family the entire time?
Well, there were other people doing it. But I will say this, nobody did it as good as we did. How do I know that? Because other people were coming to us, to help them, get into the business or to help them, do what we were doing in a way. And we lasted, 7, 8 years like that. I had the Russians involved with me. But we kept my part of it in the Columbro family, no doubt. And I had told Junior that. I said, if you let this go outside, if we start bringing other people into what we have here, into our system, we're going to blow it.
Was the thought of always expanding on the table? Or did you ever think this is enough, let's just stay at this pace?
Well, my attitude, we expanded into Florida. We'd actually had licenses to start going into California and Texas, but we didn't because a lot of heat came on at that time. This was after maybe 5 years that we were in business. We were thinking about going into Austria. Because tax at the time in Austria was like $2.50 a gallon, But I said, hey, if they lock us up in Austria, they're going to execute us, and America's not going to help us. Let's stay out of there. So, but we did get into Florida, and it was very lucrative for us in Florida. But, here's how I thought of it, Joe. Once I was into it, and I knew the government knew we were doing something, they couldn't figure it out. I said, you know what? You get as much time for $1 billion as you do for $1 million, so I may as well keep going. And that was my attitude.
So there was no end goal at all, just to see as much as you can make?
Yeah, Did I at some point, when I knew the heat was really starting to come on, did I think of how there was going to be an end game? I thought of it, but I didn't see it in my immediate future because the money was too good. It was so hard to turn down.
Did you have so much you didn't know what to do with it?
Well, I knew what to do with it. Yeah, no question. I mean, and I did with it. But it was a lot of money. We were bringing in $7-8 million a week at times, sometimes $10 million, It all depended on, on what was happening that week.
When Rudy Giuliani indicted you, he believed that you walked away from the life, and then he ended up writing a foreword in your book. Mm-hmm. Do you have any conversations with him now? Would you ever do a podcast with him now?
I would definitely do a podcast with him. I did have a conversation with him on a radio show with a mutual friend of ours, and it was very pleasant. He said, Michael, I've been watching you for 30 years, and I think your transformation is sincere. And I asked him to write the foreword of my book. I didn't think he was going to do it, but he did it, and he wrote a great one, really did. I was very pleased with it. So I have no animosity towards him. He was doing his job at the time, and fortunately I beat him, because if I didn't beat him, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now. Told me he was going to give me 100 years. He probably would have. So, but he was doing his job. I didn't always appreciate the way he did his job, but he did it, and he was very good at it. I just happened to be one of the fortunate ones that beat him. But, I wouldn't have no problem sitting down with him now. I'm going to be honest with you. This whole campaign against Trump and all of Trump's allies, I think, is outrageous. And I think he got caught up in that, and it's shameful. Regardless of, whatever, it's shameful what they're doing to him and to Trump.
When he tells you 100 years, do you just think, okay, I got to beat this? Or are you, oh, shit, like this might be bad?
Well, I mean, I obviously knew that it could be bad if I got convicted, but no, it made me more determined to beat the case. And I knew that there was a tough case against me. It really was. I'll give you an idea. The jury, I had 15 co-defendants. There was 16 of us on trial. And the jury was out for, I think, 8 or 9 days. And when they read the verdict, I was on, I think 29 count indictment. I was on like 7, 8, 9 counts, and I was on the first count and the last count. So you had to wait for every one. And they read first count against one defendant, first count against the second. It took like 3 hours to read the verdict. So after it was done, we polled the jury, and I was acquitted. We polled the jury, and they said, Michael, we acquitted you in the first hour of the first day. So it was a bad case against me.
Yeah.
But, they took a shot and they lost.
Do you think we'll ever get another book from you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it has to be something I really want to write. Mafia Democracy, my latest book, I think that book was necessary. And the comments and the reaction that I've gotten from people has been tremendously satisfying, because they said, Michael, now we get it. Because I told them, our government is acting like the mafia. It's all about money and power. And it's obvious, and I showed them exactly how. I said, this is not a fluff piece. I'm not just trying to sell books. I'm trying to make you aware of what's going on in government. It's happening right before your eyes. And people are reading it and say, you're right. And I go right down the middle. This is not a partisan book. It's a bipartisan book, because there's problems on both sides. There's no question. Money and power are very, very powerful aphrodisiacs. People don't want to give it up. I know. I felt that. I lived it. I saw it. I saw people involved in that. And when you get in government, look, I spoke to the, Senate staff and senators on the anniversary of 9/11 several years back. So I visited the White House. I visited Congress. I visited the perks that these people have. I mean, they don't even go out in the rain. Everything they have, they don't want to give that up. They don't want to give it up. It's intoxicating. And unfortunately, it gets to a point where, hey, we're going to do whatever we need to do to maintain our power. And that's what's happening now.
Do you think there's a lot of concern about this next election with voter fraud?
God, I do, yeah. I mean, there is concern, definitely concern. And listen, I think Republicans have to get smart. They got to monitor these polling locations. And I think they got to play the way the Democrats play. I mean, there's ballot harvesting and mail-in votes. I don't care how good the candidate is. I don't care if Trump is up by 30 points. If they don't do the same, engage in the same tactics that the Democrats do, we will lose the election. 100% in my mind.
So going forward,
I'm just showing my cards now, what I'm saying. But people know I'm conservative in my ideology. I don't hide it.
I can cut it out too if you don't want.
No. It's good. Put it in.
So going forward, what are you focusing your time on?
You know what? I'm going to be 73 years old next month in May, and I'm busier now than I've ever have been. I don't know if I like it.
You don't look it at all.
Well, my dad lived to be 103, so we have some good genes in the family. And fortunately, I'm surrounded by women that are all health fanatics. My wife, every one of them. So they keep my diet right. They make me go to the gym twice a week, but I'm pretty active in that regard. But I'm busier now than I've been in a long time. And it's because of Slices. We're making a lot of headway there. It's because of Franzese wine. I'm the face of the brand, so they need me. And, I'm around. I'm not just there in name only. I'm part of the company. So very active there. I'm speaking now again all over the world. Be in the United Kingdom and Monaco and Dubai, and we're going everywhere, Australia again, and all over the country. So we have so much going on. And I enjoy it. But I also am saying, Mike, when am I going to slow down a little bit? And hopefully in the next maybe 2 years. Maybe I kept saying, 70 was the number. Then I pushed it to 72. Now I'm trying to be firm at 75. God willing, I'm still here. That's what I'm trying to do.
You're doing incredible things. So thank you so much for taking the time.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me come in here too.
Well, this is a great interview. And thank you for, giving me questions that I haven't really had in the past. And you know what? I'm very thankful of that.
Thank you, Michael.
You got it.
That was great.
I enjoyed that. And I don't say that all the time. That was really good.